Even though the Pacquiao vs McGregor boxing match talks are developing and slowly materializing into a very probable reality for later on this year, Oscar De La Hoya looks beyond those talks and weighs in on a more significant fight for the boxing world in Manny Pacquiao vs Errol Spence Jr. In an interview with Snow Queen LA, he made it clear that he believes Spence would lose his undefeated record to a much faster and more mobile opponent in an aged Manny Pacquiao. Oscar went on to reminisce about his fight against a much younger Pacquiao and stated that people underestimate Pacquiao's speed and power. In fact, Oscar went on to state that he was surprised that he himself didn't get knocked out when they fought many moons ago, and pointed out the fact that Manny is a fist-throwing machine that seems to never tire and hits very, very hard. Here's the thing, Manny Pacquiao is 42 and is going on 43 years old this year. Yes, he is a legend. Yes, he's definitely an all-time great, but the man has been inactive since his victory over Keith Thurman in mid-2019. The man has had 71 fights in his career, many of which were hellacious wars. He has been brutally knocked out in the past and is currently campaigning at a weight where he is generally at a physical disadvantage. Being realistic here, although he can and is competing at the welterweight limit, Manny's power isn't nearly as formidable as it once was. To further solidify this claim, we could take a look at his record. The Filipino living legend has only had one knockout in the last 10 years. Although he does hit hard and his opponents still feel it, as evident in his last fight against Keith Thurman and numerous other recent opponents whom have visibly been hurt by Pacquiao, his power is nowhere near what it once was in his more natural weight divisions. The fact that Manny Pacquiao could even operate at this level and is still being called out by these so-called young lions, who they themselves are rapidly approaching their mid-30s, is amazing in itself. And this is where it gets murky for me. Let's look at Errol Spence Jr., since he is a name that has been mentioned as a potential opponent for Manny. Errol Spence Jr. is 31 years old and is currently a unified welterweight champion. As it stands, his two best victories come by way of decision wins over Danny Garcia and Shawn Porter. The Garcia fight was a lopsided event, but that's because of Garcia's style. He sat and waited for a non-existent opportunity to land his signature punch, and that never came, tailing behind as the fight matured and eventually lagging behind due to his over-reliance in the counterpunch department. The Porter fight was closer than anticipated, but nevertheless, it was an entertaining fight. Here's the thing, both Garcia and Porter, although excellent fighters, are limited themselves. You know Garcia will fish for a counter left hook, and you know Porter will look to bully his way in and smother you on the inside. There's no variance or nuances to their styles. Errol Spence knew exactly what he was walking into when he went on to fight them both. Aside from those wins, the only other notable names are an overweight Mikey Garcia that look atrocious in their fight, and Kell Brook, who was coming off a brutal knockout loss to Triple G 2 divisions north. Now, let me break this down. I know a lot of folks want to claim that Brook's loss to Triple G had nothing to do with how well Spence Jr. performed against him, and they always go back to the same tired thing. Well, Triple G broke one side of his face and Spence did the other, yada yada. But there's one thing, the man had to balloon 2 divisions for Triple G and then deflate back down those 2 weight divisions to fight Spence. Do you not see the problem? Let's go to the facts. The man did not fight back at welterweight after his loss to Spence for his next 3 fights. He campaigned at super welterweight for his next 3 fights. What does that tell you? Brook was in it for the payday. The same reason he jumped up for Triple G. He dehydrated back down for Spence, and he did it again for Terrence Bud Crawford recently. Anyway, I just wanted to clear that up so folks could understand why I don't believe that Kell Brook win carries too much significance. So where am I getting to with this? I'm saying that Errol Spence Jr. should seek and get a fight done with the only other name in the division that poses a legitimate threat and is a lot closer to his age group in Terrence Bud Crawford. Don't get me wrong, I understand that there are politics involved and I often don't like to bicker too much into such matters, but nevertheless, that's a fight both guys should be pushing for. Their promoters work for them, not the other way around. Anyway, what would a win over Pacquiao mean at this point? Sure, he holds a belt, but he's most likely going to get stripped here shortly due to his inactivity, especially if he prolongs his return by going after a money fight with McGregor. But I digress. What would a win over Manny Pacquiao accomplish for Spence Jr., especially with Manny being 42 years old? What about for Bud? Would a win over Pacquiao hold more significance than a win over each other? Absolutely not. Because although Manny Pacquiao is still an excellent name and talent, the truth of the matter is he is far from being in his prime and at his appropriate weight division. I don't understand some fandoms. They bash other fighters for fighting older talents. Let me give you an example. Plenty of fans reduced Saul Canelo's win over Triple G in their second fight because Triple G was 37 years old in that fight. Even though he didn't show any decline in his skills and talents between the first fight and the second fight, they simply said, well, that victory is not what it should be because Triple G is 37 years old. Now, damn near no one would give credit to Canelo if he were to beat him in a trilogy fight due to the same reason: age. Yet everyone seems to be enamored with the thought of Errol Spence and Bud Crawford mollywopping a 42-year-old Pacquiao. It's like, what? I understand if the decision is solely based on the fact that Manny holds a belt, but if he does get stripped, then what? Wouldn't that remove any significance from those fights getting made? I kinda get it, it's most likely a payday they seek, and I don't blame them, but I don't want to hear how much a victory over a 42-year-old veteran in a brutal and violent sport proves a younger man's greatness. And that's the thing. All I see a Pacquiao fight as is a money fight for these younger talents, whom should be more focused on continuing to establish their own legacies by seeking out other generational talents in their own age brackets. At the end of the day, I think Manny Pacquiao is in a win-win situation. And what do I mean by that? Well, if he loses, no shame. He challenged himself against the best this generation has to offer and would have done so at such a late age in his career. If he wins, that would speak volumes and make this generation of talent seem somewhat fabricated. He did beat a Keith Thurman and even hurt him in that fight. I'm sure that raised a few eyebrows. Even though the fan in me would love to see Pacquiao continue to dismantle these younger fighters, I would also much rather see him retire before tarnishing his incredible career. Sure, his legendary status and greatness is solidified, but sometimes it's not just about how you start your race, but how you end it too. I reserve my opinion on the fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Manny Pacquiao, or Terrence Bud Crawford and Manny Pacquiao, until they get made. If and when they do happen, I will give a fully articulated breakdown, but for now I just wanted to speak on the relevancy of a win over Pacquiao in today's climate. Anyway, I appreciate you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the content. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for a lot more content like this. I promise I'll only continue to strive for improvement. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you agree with me, or would a win over Pacquiao signify Errol's or Crawford's greatness in the sport? Like always, thanks again for tuning in. This is Shay at Kingly Boxing signing out.